Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Swannanoa Valley. I'm Anna Marcel de Armanas, and I'm a member of the board, your board. Unitarian Universalism is a liberal faith, and we are a welcoming congregation, striving to live the 8 principles that are printed inside our order of service. Our mission is to nurture spirituality, inspire growth and learning in the search for truth, and challenge us to live our values conscientiously through service and example. It's our tradition to welcome folks who are here for the first or second time or returning after a long absence. So, and if you're willing to stand and tell us your name and where you're from. So if there's anyone on this side who'd like to do that, please stand and.
Good morning. Good morning. And I come from Utica, New York, in the Adirondacks. And my wife and I are here for 5 weeks now, because we have to decide, we have a house here, we want to live here or not.
You do.
So,
Welcome.
good morning. You'll love it here.
I'm Karen. I'm from the western slope of the Adirondacks.
Okay.
And, like he said, we're just down here for a little while. I'm a professional astrologer, so I work a little bit in Black Mountain. And we thought we were getting away from the winter. My kids call it's 31 degrees below zero. The pipes are all freezing.
You did get away from it.
We did, sort of, but yeah, I'm waiting for something else to happen.
It will.
Okay, anyone else on this side? So let's go over here. Any new folks who want to introduce themselves?
Hi, I'm Joanne. I moved to Asheville in September. I've been going to the Union Church over there, but I thought I'd see what this one was like. I moved here from Portland, Oregon.
Welcome. Okay. So welcome to all, and if you're interested in learning more about us and would like to receive our newsletter or find out how you can become more involved, you can fill out the white cards that are in the back of the pews or some on the table out in the foyer, and leave them on the table, and someone will be in touch. You'll get our newsletter and you'll get more in the loop that way. Okay, announcements. This week, we promised we're having a donation drive. It was canceled last week because of the snow, like a lot of things. But there are boxes out in the foyer, and those are donations as listed in the current for Afghan, what is being called now New Americans. They're not refugees, they're New Americans, and they have a special status. So if you have items, the boxes will be out there through Tuesday during office hours. That's like 10 to 3, right? Something like that. Yes,
great.
so you can bring them in Tuesday if you didn't remember to bring them today. And we thank you very much. So,
Can I ask one question about that? I think they're next door to me. And I don't know, who do you contact if you want, they don't speak the language. I met her, but what did these, are you
Can I
attending these
suggest
people?
something? Can we take care of that at the end of the
Yeah.
service? Because we gotta get it
Oh,
going.
I see.
I appreciate it,
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
okay. So, and then finally, the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of the Swannanoa Valley acknowledges with respect that the land we are on today is the ancestral home of the Cherokee and of other indigenous people. The Cherokee, through stewardship, understanding, and conservation, survive and thrive in this land, and we acknowledge their enduring connection to their home. Now remember, if you haven't already, silence your cell phones and let the service begin.
Our opening words today come from Mother Teresa. None of us, including me, ever do great things. But we can all do small things with great love. And together, we can do something wonderful.
All righty. Welcome. We've lit a candle for Brother Thich Nhat Hanh, who, as you know, is on another journey Friday. So that's why that's there, in case you're wondering. And so if you would be so generous to stand and to join in singing our opening hymn, number 126.
To the promise
of this day. Help us bind ourselves in union. Help our hands tell of our love. With our name, not of justice, earthly fair as heaven above. Please be seated. Boy, a lot of great souls have decided to leave these last few weeks. Sydney, Bishop Sutton, Thich Nhat Hanh. I mean, I could go on and on. It's an interesting time. Interesting time. Anyway, we have our journey and we're still here. So, responsive reading number 543, please. Winter, by Unitarian Universalist Greta Crosby. We will read this responsively. Let us not wish away the winter. Wow. Maybe I should have read that before I picked it. Anyway, let us not wish away the winter. It is a season to itself, not simply the way to spring.
When trees rest, growing no leaves, gathering no light, they let the sky and trace themselves delicately against dawns and sunsets.
The clarity and brilliance of the winter sky delight. The loom of fog softens edges, lulls the eyes and ears of the quiet, awakens by risk the unquiet. Wow! Wow! Okay. It goes better. It gets better from here. It's still me. A low, dark sky. I didn't like the words. A low, dark sky in snow, emblem of individuality, liberality, and aggregate power. Snow invites to contemplation and to sport.
Yonder is the table set with ice and starlight.
Your turn.
Yes. Winter dark trends to warm light, fire and candle. Winter cold to hugs and huddles. Winter want to gifts and sharing. Winter danger to visions, plans, and common endeavors, and the zest of narrow escapes. Winter tedium to merrymaking.
Let us therefore praise winter, rich in beauty, challenge, and victory.
It's not nice to laugh at older people. Not nice. Well, we have a treat, so hopefully we will forget what just happened. And help me out here. At least I didn't forget the offer. Yeah, we got that.
This Sunday, the UUCSV choir has been working hard creating 2 new videos for you. In honor of Reverend Michael's topic, the Covenant of Love, our first video is of the inspiring song, Oh Love, composed by the brilliant Elaine Hagenberg to a text by George Matheson, with photographs contributed by members of the choir.
I'll probably forget that. Thank you, choir. Thank you, Linda. And thank you, this is the time in the service. We'll take off our masks, and at least I do, and invite you to come up and to share a joy, a concern, a sorrow. And Diana will light a candle for you, and the mic is yours.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Joy, and our last service was beautifully done about death. And what came up for me was the fact that I did hospice work for 9 years. I started as a volunteer and eventually became the coordinator. So I thought I would bring a couple of highlights of that 9 years. It was also the time of AIDS. So the first thing that came to us, so we met every month, the volunteers met every month at a church, the gentleman who took care of that church was George, and he also did everything he could possibly do to support us. So AIDS was incredibly painful. Two women who were brave brought a beautiful dinner for an AIDS patient. And he sat them at the sides of him, and they set up the whole beautiful dinner. And as he was enjoying the dinner, he turned to one of them and he put his hands on the sides of her head and kissed her on the lips. And I remember she reported to me like, well, it already happened. I don't know what I could undo. Here's a story that has nothing to do with AIDS. A lovely woman in Westport, a very luxurious area of Westport, Connecticut. And I assigned her to a patient who was a meter reader. And it was Thanksgiving. She had a whole dinner at her home, and she took a section and brought a whole dinner, a whole Thanksgiving dinner to her patient. And a very, very sweet thing was that many of the volunteers continued to visit these patients way after they were assigned. They'd drop off some soup, they would do whatever they could. It was a very powerful 9 years.
I'm Sue. I want to light 2 candles. It's been a really hard week at Earth Haven. We lost one of our members on Saturday. Her name was Courtney Brooke Allen. She was killed in an automobile accident on Saturday, I guess in the late afternoon. And not only her, but another young man got out to help. I think his name was Caleb, and he was also hit by another car and died. So, 2 candles for Courtney Brooke Allen and Caleb. Courtney was only 31 years old. It's interesting that Michael mentioned great souls passing at this time, because she certainly was a great soul. She had done so much work for the earth and for other people. She was very active helping working with some of the Native Americans in Cherokee. And several of them came to Earth Haven on Thursday when we had her memorial service and her burial. And they participated in the ceremony, and it was really beautiful. I'm just amazed by how much was done by the people at Earth Haven. Of course, we were trapped up at the top of the hill because of the snow. We really didn't even get down until Thursday. But these people worked for days, supporting each other and putting together this beautiful ceremony for her. It's just beautiful what they were able to do. And anyway, we are very sad to lose Courtney. She will be missed very much.
I'm not going to start singing, I promise. I'm really not a good, I'm nervous, but I've been wanting to do this for a few weeks. My My name is Eileen, and I live in Asheville via Brooklyn, if anyone knows Brooklyn, New York. Anyhow, I have a new friend. Her name is Abigail McGinnis, and she lives way north, top of Vermont, right near the Canadian border. And if you're following patterns of the COVID, sorry for my back. Northern Vermont is, I don't want to use expletive, but it's in big trouble. And she's 9, and she's severely immune compromised. I can tell you a little bit about Abigail. She's very tall. She's 9. She loves unicorns. She's brilliant, and she has a wicked sense of humor. So I'm asking you to hold her in your prayers and thoughts. Wish I had a picture of her. Am I supposed to ask you to light a candle? I think we're lighting a candle now. So I have a little joy, if you don't mind me sharing. I'm involved with the Afghani Refugee Project, and I volunteered to make a dinner. Should have been videotaped. I'm not much of a cook, but I figured if I put on Middle Eastern music, it might help. And, you know, a little sage. I wore my new Italian apron. It was freshly washed. I turned everything off. You know, it was beautiful candles and everything. Well, I can attest to the fact that Middle Eastern music doesn't make you a better cook. But there was so much love pouring out of me, and that's what cooking is. I'm Italian, and it's love. And as Mother Teresa says, or she's been quoted as making up this quotation, service is love. So.
I am Larry Perlman, and I'd like to light a joy of sorrow today, or maybe 2 candles. There's a group of us from Hillside, New Jersey that got very friendly in 6th and 7th grade and stayed that way throughout. Not high school reunion or college reunion, this is 7th grade reunion. Every time I go back to New Jersey, I gather up these folks and we get together. And it's me and Eddie and Freddie and Patty and Joy and Nancy and Sharon. And Patty passed away this past week with COVID. She was compromised, as was her husband, Mel, who passed away 2 days after she did. So, both with COVID. So I'd like to light 2 candles of sorrow.
This being late January, I'm Andy. My mother died on January 28th of 1993, and every year at this time I remember her. And by chance, when I learned that the choir was singing "Oh Love," and Linda asked for photographs, I sent in a bunch of photographs of my family that included 3 of my mother, one with her on the lap of her brother, one on her mother's lap, and one when she married my father right after World War II. And Linda used all 3 of those photographs in the slideshow. I want simply to light a candle of joy and of love, because as a single person, I have a chosen family. And real family, to me, is the epitome of love. And you are my chosen family. And being able to sing that song and see my mother's pictures up there reminded me of how important family and love are. Thank you.
I'm Marty Saltzman, and I'd like to light one candle of sorrow, as I found out this week that one of my old friends from grammar school and high school died this week. Her name is Lillian Tong. Her parents were refugees from Taiwan. Her dad was a scientist at Kodak, and my dad was an engineer at Kodak. And Lillian was just the smartest, gentlest, most loving person. And thanks to the splendors and of Facebook. I reconnected with her a few years ago and actually talked to her on the phone, and she was living in Madison, Wisconsin, where I also lived at one point. And I'm just full of sorrow that she's gone, because she was a beautiful soul. The other candle is for my grandchildren. I have 4 of them. They have now all survived COVID. My daughter's other 2 children, besides Gus, who had Delta back in October, had Omicron, and they all made it through with no problems. And my granddaughter Zora, who's a freshman in college, also had it at Christmas time, and she's fine. Gus is on the mend. He's doing a little bit better. Slowly, he gets a little more happy and spirited as time goes on, and hopefully eventually he'll make a full recovery from what appears to be long COVID. So, thank you.
Good morning. I'd like to light a candle of remembrance this morning and of strength and love for the family of Dick Walton. Some of you may have known Richard Dick Walton or his wife Sue. They were members of the Asheville Youth Congregation, and he passed this week. So another beautiful soul lost to the world. And just a candle of strength for any other friends and family, including maybe some of our own congregation members also struggling with COVID right now.
Hi, I'm Sue Stone, and I was very humbled yesterday when I volunteered to take one of the families that are now staying with the Carrolls. I took them grocery shopping, and what an adventure. And I'm just filled with thousands of ideas about what we can do as a village to help the families that are settling in this area. Because language, the family that I worked with didn't speak English, don't write or read their own language. So communication was interesting, but I think we've got to figure out ways to connect them together, because I know there's other families that are settling, and so I think it's incumbent upon us to find ways to bring them together as a community. I can't imagine being dropped, ripped from your family, dropped into a culture that is so different, and not being able to speak the language. So, Social Action Committee, they're the contact, and hopefully we'll all get involved.
Unfortunately, one more candle of sorrow. My best friend from 6th grade that I've known for 27 years lost his father this past week from COVID, so.
My name is Elizabeth Wallace, and I'm a member of Mountain Mindfulness in Asheville, which is the Thich Nhat Hanh group. So following up Michael's acknowledgement of the passing or transformation, as he would say, of Thich Nhat Hanh, just a reminder that the next 5 days worldwide there will be ceremonies for the burial of Thich Nhat Hanh, and all you need to do is to type in Plum Village, and some of those recordings on the internet are from Vietnam, where he's being interred. So I feel like he was, I told some of you earlier that my youngest son died of COVID a year ago, and it was through a remarkable book that he wrote recently that's called How to Live When a Loved One Dies with Daily Meditations, that allowed me to be able to deal with the death of my son. So, to Thich Nhat Hanh.
Anyone else? Okay, for those of you who decided not to come up for whatever reason, know that we keep you in our hearts and in our minds. Susan Hicks will do the meditation this morning.
Good morning. The meditation I've chosen this morning is called Healing Strands of the Great Web by Erica Hewitt. Mystery of mysteries, we are thirsty for justice and bearing witness to grief. We're claiming our inherent wholeness and healing strands of the great web. We are hungry for liberation and cracking ourselves wide open. We are mourning the dead and fighting for the living. We're singing for joy and striving for meaning. We are embodying love, reaching out in love, acting on love's behalf, and letting that love wash over us, ebbing and flowing as it carries and holds us all. May we do it all over again when the new day comes.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you, Diane. Well, we do have another treat from the choir. I also want to collect this morning's offering, the words of Brother Muhammad. Our true wealth is the good that we do in this world, and none of us has faith unless we desire for our neighbors what we desire for ourselves. And so in that spirit, we collect this morning's offering.
Composer Malvina Reynolds was a political activist, a union organizer, and a Unitarian Universalist, born in San Francisco in the year 1900. Her gifts as a prolific songwriter were discovered by Pete Seeger in 1945, and she performed along with him often. A few of her best-known songs are Turn Around, Little Boxes, Andorra, It Isn't Nice, and What Have They Done to the Rain? But today we're going to turn to one of her many exciting children's songs called Magic Penny. Lend it and spend it. Thank you very much.
Ann, what did you say?
I said that was a sermon.
Oh, you're over there, yeah. Thank you. I'm glad you made it. Glad you made it. Some of y'all left some stuff up here. Oh, okay, so before we start, I got a bad joke for you from Larry Perlman. It's real bad. I mean, I'm only going to do one. That's how bad it is. A son says to his father, "Daddy, are we pyromaniacs?" And Dad says, "Yes, we are, son." Just don't throw a shoe up here, okay? All right? Just don't do that. See?
I wasn't lying.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and we have guests, and I've done this. Occasionally, for those of you who are new, if we haven't turned you off already, I tell a slew of bad jokes, mostly coming from this congregation, so don't hold it against me. But there'll be more if you decide to come back. For those new folks here, though, I do want to say Happy New Year. You know, we had some changes in the schedule, right? We talked about Martin a couple weeks early, but you can always talk about Martin, so that's okay. And then the care committee is going to be doing a service that was supposed to be today, so we moved it up. So this was supposed to be my first sermon to y'all for the new year, but bear with me. I do want to say to new folks, though, Happy New Year. And thank you for taking the Sunday to come to this nurturing sanctuary for free religion and for people of faith of a more liberal bent. All are welcome. When I was coming up in my wilder days, New Year's was usually a time, New Year's Day especially, was a time for me to kind of get over hangovers and wonder what I did the night before, and why is this person in my bed with me? It was just a messy time. But I've come a long way. And so, you know, trying to clean up the act. So, and I used to make resolutions, which I don't anymore. And I don't know, maybe you do, but I don't know. I haven't for decades, for years. And I just wound up either forgetting them, I would write them down, or I wouldn't live up to them. So I just stopped doing it. I just gave up. It's interesting, when I swim at the Y, this time of year, it's hard to get a lane. Usually from, like, some people are going to get their beach bodies in January, but by usually the end of the month, it's easy for me to get a lane again. I'll be there tomorrow, because their resolutions just kind of didn't hold. I have a friend who was a recovering Catholic who made me New Year's resolutions the same year that he gave up feeling guilty for Lent. And he said it was quite liberating. My first wife, who was Jewish, said that, how does she put it? Jews are born with guilt, and Catholics have guilt pressed upon them. It's tough. But anyway, I don't make resolutions. But whatever the cause of the feeling of obligation, New Year's Day does bring with it, right? This kind of feeling that it's going to be a tabula rasa. I'm going to start new. There's going to be a clean slate. And even though it's an artificial, completely artificial calendar-based beginning. But the wonderful interconnected living web of existence, of which we are all a part, has its own new beginnings that are not human-made. There's the solstice. That's a natural time to kind of mark your calendars. At the end of January, there's the lunar New Year. New beginnings, fresh starts. We all want that. We all kind of need that as sentient beings. And so you, like me, have seen lots of New Years come and go. And I think it would be fair to say that many of them have been challenging. I've lived like you through times of war and fear and progress and struggle, remembering the civil rights movement, Vietnam, other wars that we continue to want to wage, times that have turned people against one another. We just lived through a coup, January 6th. I never thought I'd see that, but life is always interesting. I guess you can never say it can't happen to me, or it can't happen here. COVID. So there's this feeling that the underpinnings of society, at least in our society, it's not stable. Not stable. Time will tell. We have some interesting times coming up, especially midterms coming up, and it's just a lot going on. So struggles continue within the protective envelope of our nation's institutions and values. But the earth is still turning, even though sometimes it seems like it's tilted off its axis. If you look at when it gets dark now, when it doesn't, it's kind of like things, well, the sun is over here, but last year was, have you ever noticed that kind of stuff? Something is it's going on. Winters are still followed by springs, so far. Taken for granted springs, I might add. And yes, we continue to face conflict and struggle. That's nothing new. But again, it seems like the basic social contract that we made with one another is fraying. The earth she's crying out. There are too many deaf ears. Some ears are deliberately deaf. And these past few years, more than I can remember, we always seem to be in a time of crises. And that's always interesting. Crises is not a bad word, actually. Its Greek root means to discern, to distinguish, to decide. Not too far from another Greek word, a New Testament word called metanoia, which means being able to turn and to change our ways. Maybe there's a through line there. So I guess what I'm asking you is, do you think that maybe this is a time to consider making New Year's resolutions? The trouble with New Year's resolutions is that most of the time they are specifically, they're individual, and they're specifically targeted as, I'm going to stop smoking or drinking or getting into toxic relationships or the like. And these are good things. I encourage it. Yet, this is a time when we are facing a crisis together, not just individually. And this is also an unfolding crisis that will be shifting and changing as we go along. Remember when Martin was talking back in '68, the night before he was killed. There's some difficult days ahead. And there are some difficult days ahead. I think we are kidding ourselves if we think that all of a sudden this is all going to just go away. We may see our country go through some really, really drastic changes in the next several years. But in the crisis, we can weather this. We can weather this. But we must be together. In crisis, we must be strong together. We must be responsive together. We must be resilient together. And I want to be clear, because when I was explaining this sermon to someone the other day, they said, well, you sound like you're saying circle the wagons. That's not what I'm saying at all. Because good fences make good neighbors, but fences keep you in. And they keep other. I'm not talking about circling the wagons. And we're still going to have to do what we've been doing in the community. But COVID had a way of making us realize that we're more of a community when we're together. A lot of people talk about hope. And I was listening to Dick Gregory the other day. I'm not going to use the expletives, but he didn't have a lot of good things to say about hope. I once heard a motivational speaker, Les Brown, talk about hoping is not a process. But yet you don't want to take hope from people unless you have something better to replace it with. And so there's a funny thing about hope. We can get caught up into the trap of hoping that something will happen, hoping that something succeeds, or hoping that we may avoid something. But this closes the horizon. It leads to disappointment and to disillusionment. Real hope is hoping in something, hoping in one another, trusting the future, because we have to embrace it. What? We have to embrace it together. Real hope opens possibilities. It frees up creative energy that each of us have. We're going to need that. This New Year's calls us together, 23 days in. It's calling us to be together. And that's what we need to remember. Resolutions sometimes can make it better, but they don't always cut it. So I guess this New Year's calls, I'm contradicting myself now, but it calls maybe for something larger than resolutions. It calls for a covenant. A covenant. What is a covenant? Well, I'm glad you asked. When you love somebody and you love them back, well, that's kind of a covenant, right? Covenant is love shared when people join together in love. But covenant is also about taking a stand. To stand together in love is to be a covenanted people. And so today I want to talk about our New Year's covenant. What would a covenant of free people of faith, of followers of liberal religion, if you will, what would that look like in 2022? It would be challenging, for sure. It would be demanding. It would call each of us to reach into our deepest selves and to give and to grow and to share. It would call on us to embrace not only our little group, but every sentient being, all of creation. It would call on us to, and this is important, to question ourselves. I was talking yesterday, someone recommended me for an anti-racism training for this small nonprofit. It's predominantly white. And so they asked me what I was going to talk about, how to be an ally to marginalized people, folk of color specifically. And they were a little hesitant, but I'm at the age now, I was like, either you want it or you don't. I'm not gonna, you call me. You call me. I'm watching the football game. And they got it. I think we're going to work it out. But it was like they didn't want to talk about going inside, working from the inside out. Because for me, when you change the inside, the outside changes. It would call on us to embrace life, but it would call on us to question ourselves, to open ourselves up to being more uncomfortable, to growth and change. It will call on us to take, responsibility for more than ourselves, even for our whole entire planet, as much as you can do. I mean, because, I don't want you to go out here and feeling overwhelmed. It's very challenging, this New Year's covenant. Do you think we're up to the challenge? I'm not going to ask you for a show of hands. But I think not only are we up to it, but we're already in the covenant. I'm just here today to remind you, we made this covenant a long time ago. It's like your past life. Sometimes you don't remember them, but you're here now. You can't say, I don't want to be on this planet now. I mean, you can say it, but you've already kind of signed a little soul contract. It's right in front of you. Look around you. Look to the person next to you. This is what the covenant looks like. This is what it looks like. A beautiful covenant. From up here, it's beautiful. You should see it. We have our 8 principles. You have them in front of you. I just want to go over them before we go home. What a powerful New Year's covenant those principles make. Think about it. We can't take them for granted. As you use, and you don't have to be you use, it helps. But we covenant to affirm and support the inherent worth and dignity of every sentient being. Because all the other 7 come out of that. Our neighbors down the street say we're all made in the image and likeness of God. I don't care how you say it. You gotta start living it. But we respect the inherent worth and dignity of every person, 4-legged, 2-legged, winged, if you crawl, whatever nation, whatever tribe you belong to. You see where the challenge is now, don't you? This means that we affirm all those who have cause to fear in this time of change, and as those who appear to be the cause of the fear. Yeah, that means Mitch McConnell, I hate to say it, it means, whose mansion, and yeah. I'm not saying you gotta have tea with them, but they're sentient. They make mistakes and flawed, it's tough. Next time, go somewhere else. That's what we have to do. But on planet Earth, this is the law. Can you hear echoes in the New Testament from this? To love your enemies. And they may not even be your enemies, but Gandhi talked about soulful satyagraha. King talked about a loving resistance. It's challenging, but it's a powerful principle for this time in history. These 8 principles. It's not Mickey Mouse. Somebody critiqued it. I was talking to them. They said, "Oh, come on, Michael, what holds y'all together? That's the UN could have come up with that." Exactly. So what's wrong with that? They're not overly religious, is what they were trying to say. But we're trying to love beyond belief. That's what we put on the sign. Love beyond belief. Justice, equity, we affirm and support justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. The challenge just of compassion is daunting. And the Buddhists use that, it's more nuanced than love. Because everybody has a different, love can be misconstrued. Compassion, it's a more nuanced word. It has more empathy. It means we have the ability to enter into another person's world and to share their suffering. It also means being moved to do everything in our power to correct that suffering, to right the wrongs, to remedy, to strengthen, to be a bodhisattva like Brother Thich Nhat Hanh, like Brother Mark, like Toni Morrison with her writings. The list goes on. This we affirm and support. Acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth. Acceptance is not mere tolerance. Who are we to tolerate anybody? Oh, I'm just tolerating. No, that doesn't even feel good. I'm just tolerating you. That's not what it's all about. It's like a live and let live attitude. Acceptance is an embrace. Acceptance means including one another in the circle of love. It means showing up. It means listening. And it also means it goes beyond the congregation. That goes back to the first principle. Every person. Encouragement to spiritual growth reaches outward. Spiritual growth means cultivating your inner life. It means turning inward, opening your hearts and your ears. It means expanding our circle of love, even to those you hate. Why did they write that? but it can be done. Acceptance without resistance, loving resistance. This is a covenant y'all made. I made it with you. I get mad that I did it. I said, what was I thinking? It's like that New Year's. What are you doing here? How'd you get in here? This we affirm and support, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We covenant to our seekers to be together. A seeker is on the way. She hasn't arrived yet. But remember, because people say, well, I'm a seeker. That's great. But remember, you seek to what? To find something. That's the goal, not just to seek. You want to find something. A seeker is on a quest, questioning not only dogmas and other such claims, but questioning ourselves, right? Malcolm X says the unexamined faith is not worth having. Unexamined faith is not worth having if you don't question what you believe every so often. There's such a thing as a divine uncertainty, and we have to embrace the unknown. At the same time, we recognize that we have to call out all forms of idolatry. The flag is not democracy. It's the flag. That's idolatry. We affirm and support. Well, you know the other principles. I just asked you, before the week is out, just read them. Just go down and read them. Maybe you'll read them before we leave. This is what the 8 principles, well, we've added the 8, but these are the principles of the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, of which we are a part. You don't have to be a UU to affirm them, but it does help. And so we are the right people at the right time. These principles are exactly what we need at this time in our nation's history, and guess what? We are at the right place at the right time. We got them where we want them. We got them where we want them. Because there's no accidents. This is the light of our soul that shines forth into darkness. And it is the spark that ignites hope when everything seems lost. You got to have something that you stand for. And so I encourage you as we go, let your light shine. Let it spread out. You're gonna have to. You're gonna have to. You don't have to. You can march. You can you can do peaceful, firm demonstrations, helping out, service. If that's not your bag, a smile, a kind word, a pause to listen. Doesn't have to be grandiose. That changes the frequency, changes the vibration of the planet. It does. And so, I just want to leave you with these words from Julian of Norwich, who said these during the plague, the pandemic. I hate when people call it the Black Death. Let's just call it what it was, the bubonic plague. It triggers me, the other one. I need to get help. She wrote this in the 14th century in Europe during the time of the bubonic plague. All will be well, she writes. Even in the face of such death and catastrophe, she said this. And so in this new year, in this critical time, I'll give you the whole thing. She says, all shall be well, and all shall be well. And all manner of things shall be well. It didn't just happen to us. Don't forget that. Amen.
Amen.
And blessed be. Okay. Please rise as you are willing and able and join in our closing hymn. We would be one, number 318. We would be one.
You try to sit down if you can. I knew you could do that. Okay, here's a wintry touch of togetherness by Billy Collins, you may know as the poet laureate. This is called Shoveling Snow with Buddha. Right, okay. Here we are, working our way down the driveway, one shovelful at a time. We toss the light powder into the clear air. We feel the cold mist on our faces, and with every heave we disappear and become lost to one another. This is so different than a sermon in church, I say out loud. But Buddha keeps on shoveling. This is the true religion, the religion of snow and sunlight and winter geese barking in the sky, I say. But he's too busy to hear me. He's thrown himself into shoveling snow as if it were the purpose of existence, as if the sign of a perfect life were a clear driveway you could back the car down easily and drive into the vanities of the world. All morning long, we worked side by side until the hour is nearly noon and the snow was piled high all around us. And after this, he asked, "Can we go inside and play cards?" "Certainly," I reply, "and I'll bring cups of hot chocolate to the table while you shuffle the deck." "Ah," says the Buddha, lifting his eyes and leaning for a moment on his shovel, before he drives the thin blade again deep into the glittering white snow. So, next time you get out your shovels, would you give Buddha my best? Have yourself a high old time.